Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun, where we'll help you forecast your cash flow, understand where you're headed as a business, model scenarios, make better decisions. And I'm really excited today to have joining me Matt Howard from Maverick Agency in Calgary, a creative agency that I've seen you guys work. You do such cool stuff and is also really close to my heart because I had a creative agency for over a decade. So I always love talking with other founders. Thanks for joining me, Matt.
Yeah, thanks so much, Blaine. It's great to be here.
So I know we've talked. It was funny, like right before we got on the show here, we started talking, and then it was kind of like, yeah, we should just start recording because I know this always happens talking with other entrepreneurs. There's so much going on in the world right now for business, and it's just top of everybody's mind as an entrepreneur. But before we kind of skip forward to what's kind of going on today, I just wanted to get a better understanding of like, how did you first become an entrepreneur? What was the first thing that kind of I don't know, got you thinking that this was where you wanted to head?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deep on that one, but I think what we're doing now today with Maverick is really the culmination of a series of life events, probably. If I'm being totally honest. I was a kid growing up, really, when uh, at the dawn of the internet, so to speak, and
Mhm.
the first home computer, became a thing when I was a kid, and so all these technological sort of advances were happening in these formative years for me. And so I think, I could probably trace it back as early as that, however old, 10, 12 years old, the first compact Presario landed at home, and the internet first got hooked up. Mom was picking up the phone when I was trying to download something, or, how it went back then.
I
Uh,
remember it well.
so I think
Yeah.
those are sort of the seeds, the first beginnings that put a twinkle in my eye. But right from as far back as then, I always had a keen interest in the creative world, in advertising, in marketing, and in and branding. And from there, I think from those early sort of years all the way through school and high school, communication technology was a course back then where you would start to learn how to do things with computers.
Yeah.
And so as far back as then, high school is really where I got my first sort of practical experience, not only with some things in the creative world and regarding, building websites, designing them, developing them,
Mhm.
but also the first taste of entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah.
So back then, it was early, like grade 10, 11. Me and a group of guys got together, and we would, start doing things. It all started in this Comtech class in high school.
Mhm.
And we had a really great teacher who encouraged us to just, kind of do whatever and spread our wings, which was fantastic. So we started dabbling, or, building different sort of things, graphics, websites. We formed this little makeshift sort of company. And we actually picked up a couple of awards. Like, this will definitely date me, but at the time, Nortel awarded us this Young
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship Award. And so that was pretty cool. And, it sort of pointed the direction for everything that followed, which was, subsequent to that, graduating high school, going to art school, going to business school, but then ultimately just, continuing to follow that passion that I personally had. And
Yeah.
I mean, Maverick has been, from a very early point in my life, a big part of it. So, right out of school, that's kind of how things got going.
Yeah. It's so did you there's some different tangents I want to get into there. It's really interesting because I'm a few years older than you, but I can all the things you're talking about of like starting to build those first websites in high school. I was in like a couple of years in university. I know I look like way older, but I'm actually not probably that much older. I probably didn't age as well as you. Um, but but I remember those times, and it's amazing how um, uh, sort of getting those first clients Cause I had the same thing. Like you know, first few clients was still when I was in university, and the, the, the stuff I made was good. The client, dealing with the client and learning how to be a business person was school hard knocks on all those first ones. Like, what was your experience when you know, your first few clients?
Oh, definitely School of Hard Knocks, and especially at
First business, my first real business, uh, it was all networking. Like that's how I got it off the ground, right? Was just building a network, and networking was the big primary thing. I want to ask you something though, because you're actually a bit of a rarity from a lot of the entrepreneurs I talk with. Um, Almost everything you said is like, yeah, that is exactly what I hear from no matter what industry, whatever, except for where you said you went to business school, which is super smart, but a rarity amongst entrepreneurs. So I wanted to see like, so you knew early enough, like early on, that you actually wanted to go into business, or how did you end up there?
No, I really didn't. So you know, just to drill down on that a bit further and following what I was passionate about, I applied to go to the Alberta College of Art and Design to go through
Okay.
visual communication, um, and try to, you know, just further advance my knowledge in that field. And I absolutely hated it. I remember I think my first year was covered based on the merit of my portfolio at the time, which was awesome.
Mhm.
But I hated it nonetheless. It was a lot of like getting trapped in a class, forced to draw like bowls of fruit and like naked old guys, and
Been
it was
there.
absolutely terrible. Art
Yeah.
history, you know, I have a bit more appreciation for now probably than I did then, but
Yeah.
didn't like very much of it at all. And so by the end of the second year, um, I made the decision to leave there and pursue something a bit different, which was business instead.
Yeah.
And you know, to their credit, some of the instructors at the school helped sort of shape that decision for me as well, which I have to give them credit for.
Yeah. It's, when, you know, it's interesting that you saw, obviously you saw something there that brought you to go like, this isn't what I want to do, but there was some business side that you found interesting. Um, I remember like when I was in university, I took, I majored in visual communication design. I
Right.
minored in industrial design. I loved industrial design. In fact, I was probably better at it. But I think I was already in that means to an end, right? Like starting an industrial, like in design shop or whatever, or even getting a job in that industry felt like it was a lot more difficult, a lot more limiting. And so even though graphic design probably wasn't my sort of my true passion in a way, it something in the back of my head said that's where the opportunity is. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so often it's that opportunity rings a bell, and you start to head that way.
Yeah.
Um, so you went to business school, so you came out of business school. What was your like, did you actually go into business right away, or did you go work for someone for a while, or what did you
I went,
do?
I went into business right away,
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
straight away. Yeah. And it was kind of a means to an end, like you said. So
Yeah.
balancing out what I really loved and thought I wanted to do at the time, which is still what I love and want to
Yeah.
do. And then basically just, figuring out a mechanism that would allow me to do that. Right.
Yeah. So was it Maverick at the time, or has it been different sort of?
It's been different sort of things over the years, but I think for the last dozen or so, it's apart again,
Yeah.
which was for the best and just allowed a nice sort of natural progression for Maverick as well.
Yeah. It's and that's a whole, we won't sort of dive into that, but you could do an entire episode on the dynamics of partners, because it can be really challenging. It can be super beneficial, but also really challenging. Um,
Absolutely.
but I do want to kind of dive in a little bit to the like the interesting part to me is how you started to get that traction, those customers, and then how you balanced out expanding the team and expanding the business while growing the revenue and growing like it's always that push pull up down. What do we do now? Should we do it? And you're taking little leaps of faith here and there. How did you sort of get that ball rolling?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the mechanisms that allowed us to achieve a bit of initial growth is one that's still present today, which really is just leaning into your network
Mm-hmm.
as much as you can, or to whatever extent you have a network at that point in time.
Yeah.
So really, that is how it started, just leaning into basically everybody that trying to scrape together opportunities and pull some business through the door.
That's likewise. I did exactly the same thing, and I did a few years in, same thing. Kind of joined. Someone else brought in kind of a partner, and had a partner until I sold the business back in 2011, 2012 ish sort of area. Um, but I'm curious because I kind of know how, so a little bit about my experiences of, and I'm curious how this sort of worked for you. But like, we started with these initial clients. Um, and early on, it was like we'd say for a while, it's like we got to quit the anything for a buck.
Yeah,
And we started to go, okay, how do we take the next step up? And so we would get like what we call a halo project. It was a high enough profile that it would help us take a step to the next one, and then we would kind of try and close the door on the ones that weren't right. And it's never quite as clean as it sounds. But how did you find that moving from that sort of initial network to going, here's where we're really good, here's where our best clients are, here's where we focus and start to grow on that?
yeah. Boy, that's is that ever a multifaceted question, Blaine? I could
Not an easy one, is it?
let me
Yeah.
try and unpack that and put it back together. So I think one
Yeah.
of the most difficult things to figure out over time and to continue to figure out as things evolve is just knowing which levers to pull that will help fuel growth. Because
Mhm.
obviously, we talked about networking and trying to lean into that as a means of pulling business through the door. You cannot rely on that if you're looking at scaling a team or scaling the
Yeah.
business. And that's one of the most difficult things I think to figure out as the economy and just the business landscape we're in, shifts and evolves, is knowing which levers to pull at which point in time.
Mhm.
So that's one of the biggest things. And then, beyond that, it's I think one of the best things that I ever did in terms of maintaining focus on what we're doing and relative to growth is getting rid of all the sort of the small potato stuff. When
Mhm.
you think about the 80-20 rule, there was a point in time, and interestingly enough for us this is during COVID, so fairly recently, but uh, it was actually a great time to just take a step back and have a think about a lot of different things as the world sort of came to a halt.
Yeah.
But I came to the realization that 80% of the headache was coming from the 20% of clients who were causing, they were directly attributable for 20% of revenue, but they were causing all the headache within the organization.
Yeah.
So I got rid of them and I fired
Mhm.
them all. And that 80%, um, of the revenue that were our dream clients, we just continue to scale that and do good work. I've always been a proponent of, do good work and get great work. Sorry, you might have to edit that one a bit.
No, no, it's I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that's part of what drives us forward, is just the pursuit of doing the best possible work, pushing that bar, pushing that level up each and every time as much as possible, and then you know getting the fruits of that.
It's interesting because like I remember having those sorts of points in my during my agency days where we would consciously do the same thing. It's like these ones are not working for us. It's like you said, it's causing all the headaches.
Mhm.
It's wrapping up our team in knots. It's doing, but these ones are great. And so we would make the same thing, those decisions. We were very fortunate. I think we fired one of our first clients when I got my partner on board, and it was a fairly big one, to be honest. We learned a lot of hard lessons from that, and realized that was not gonna, like, it would have killed us probably if we would have kept going.
Yeah,
But it is those hard decisions, and it's funny because now, like, I've with Dryrun, we're still always figuring out, like, where is that the 80% coming from, and it takes a lot of man, sometimes it takes a lot of like inner fortitude to kind of go, no, we're cutting this revenue stream off, or we're doing that because it's not working for us. How, like, did
yeah.
you do the same as me, where you hold your breath and your chest gets a little tight and you just go, I think it's the right thing to do, so we're going to do it?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's sometimes a few sort of runny poop moments, as I sometimes refer to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not the easiest thing, and in doing so, you have to maintain some principles. Like
Yeah.
for us, the two criteria that sort of preclude any sort of work or relationship or partnership or anything are, or sorry, precede any of that, are great people and great work. So it
Yeah.
has to be people that you could see yourself, going out and grabbing coffee with, or going for a beer. And then the work, we have to be able to know that we can come into this and add significant value and do great work. So if
Hmm.
those two conditions are met, then that's sort of step one in any sort of new engagement or partnership for us.
Yeah.
But definitely, it can be tough when you're looking at culling low value sort of um, clients, but it is
Yeah.
ultimately for the best.
Yeah, and best for you and them. Like
Yeah,
that, like this, it's very true. It's not necessarily a good fit for them either, of course. And
for sure.
um, it's there's something tickling at the back of my brain, and it just went poof, which is too bad because it's going to come back because I wanted to ask you about something in that area of. But how do you? Okay, here's what I was sort of thinking of, because one of the things I realized looking back now that I don't think I appreciated enough at the time was I don't know if we ever had a really solid understanding of where we were the best and why people wanted to hire us. They seem to know. They seem to somehow see us and know we need these guys. I never knew who else they were talking with necessarily or what the other proposals are like. I remember times where we're going, I think we got to raise our prices again because we're winning every bid and we shouldn't be winning every bid.
Yeah.
Like we should be a little more competitive. It's now a decade after I sold that business, or more, actually more than a decade, that I can actually look and realize at the time we brought some superpowers that I don't think anyone else have. And it led us down a path, and that's how we kept getting these deals. And if we veered off of that, we weren't as competitive and the projects weren't as good or anything. Fortunately, it seemed like the customers recognized it more than we did. Right? But like, it's such an important thing that we're always fighting within Dryrun to just really nail down that where we bring that value to whom and all of that. How, like, have you guys, like, how did you get to that point where it's like, this is where we're best, this is where we absolutely can compete, this is why people love us, so this is who we go after?
That's a great question. How's that saying go? He who sharpens the saw cuts the tree down faster, something like that.
Okay.
It's it's an ongoing thing for us where, I'm a firm proponent that where we add the most significant value is the intersection of what we do best and just that, and who we do it for. And the who we do
Mm-hmm.
it for is the tricky thing, because as an agency, we're quite adept at coming into different situations within different industries, different types of brands and businesses, identifying problems, on the flip side, looking at the opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and making all the things happen, needed in order to get there. So the danger there is if you succumb to that, you become a generalist agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so where we're really focusing right now is just staying really true to what we do best. So, the three or four core things focused on brand, online platform development, web design and development, and brand marketing, staying really, really true to that, not taking on anything else that's sort of peripheral to that, and then niching down in a few different sort of industries. Whereas before, at one point, I would say, and this is probably due to where we got our sort of start and our first sort of client base. There was a point in time where I would probably say that end consumer brands, consumer packaged goods, that was really our sweet spot. And I still think it is. But in addition to that, I think there's, just as a result of the work that we've done over the years in different sort of spaces, there's actually a few different verticals and a few industries where we can be really, really effective. So
Mm-hmm.
it's knowing
Yeah.
what we do and then knowing who we can really do it best for, and making sure there's really good alignment there. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's something you need to tinker with.
Well, and something I want to dig into a little bit as we get up to where, yeah, kind of more of what you're doing today, and that is and we were talking a little bit about that before we got on to the show here, is the environment outside, the business environment, the challenges businesses are facing, and of course we both sell generally to businesses. Inflation, that like there's all of these things that have sort of packaged together. Um, Back in my agency days, I always say that 2008, 2009 were like the most formative years for us, because before then we were just kind of sailing along. Then we had to do a massive change in the business, and frankly, probably should have scaled back, but we didn't. We didn't want to let anyone go or anything. So we just like, we've got to find a way. We got to find a way. We got to find a way. and it was sort of sharpened the edge of the sword on how we could do that.
Mhm.
Um, and ultimately it led to directly in a way to Dryrun, because it was moving from um, some of the unknowns and kind of flying by the seat of our pants to, okay, we don't have the luxury anymore. We've got to really dial in and understand this stuff. And that finance area, cash flow forecast, and all that was an area that I think dug us out of the hole because it was such a deep recession. I'm seeing that across, and we were talking about a little bit about, I've seen it across verticals and businesses everywhere, that boy, are businesses really paying attention to the details, the nickels, the dimes, the everything. And how is that? How are you seeing that? How's it affecting? Like, what are you doing in your business? But what are you seeing out there as well with businesses right now that are sort of just really uh, careful?
That's a good question. Like we were chatting about before we got on, I think there's a number of different factors that are contributing. And, you know, I'm not an economist by any means or anything like that, but knowing what's happening inside our business and also with our client partners, it's one thing if it's happening once or twice, but it's another thing if it's a more prevalent sort of occurrence that you witness. And I think what we're seeing is something similar to what you just described, where there's a lot of scrutiny just on project specifics, on deliverables, on line items. And, what can you attribute that to? Stickiness of inflation, potentially. Um, you know, no one wants to use the R word, but maybe we're seeing a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely a combination of factors, and businesses also just being more protective, as
Yeah.
you're aware of cash flow, to be honest, and
Mm-hmm.
um, focusing on looking ahead and making sure that they have the resilience and the grit to continue forward.
Yeah, it's obviously a totally different sector, but we felt just so much of the same thing where it's just everything's scrutinized, everything, and it's not bad. People are buying, but it's like everything's questioned, everything's scrutinized, everything's discussed, everything's checked, everything, which is good. It's also a little bit exhausting, that's, it makes everything just like a bit of a challenge. You learn from it, where different people are coming in with there's people that come in that are almost kicking down our door going, we need help with this. And it's a much bigger problem and a much more of an efficiency problem and multi-department problem and all these things that are like, oh my God, we're drowning in this, because they don't have, probably, I'm just thinking of this now, but probably part of it is they don't have any more room to anyone else, hire more resources, add anything. And it's just making it a bigger
Yeah.
challenge for everybody. Um, it's interesting. It'd be more interesting in a way if we could just sit back and watch, but it's like, no, we're right in the middle of this. So you kind of have to deal with it. So like, what are you guys doing to, like, how are you guys adjusting, and how are you looking at the next year or two, being able to thrive and grow and adjust to all these things?
It's a good idea, or sorry, a good question rather, Blaine. I think there's a couple things that we're doing. So one is currently we're just adapting to changing needs and situation. Similar to what you described, we're seeing a lot of that where there's companies are under resourced internally, and sometimes rightfully so. A lot of businesses have no business building out like a full fledged marketing and creative department within themselves, and they're better off focusing on what their core business actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing a lot of changing asks and scopes. you know e- Even just recently, someone will come in asking for a rebrand or a new web build to support spinning out part of the company, or something like that. And then quickly things will just evolve to, but we also need some ongoing support now to align with that. Or
Mm-hmm.
we need the web, but we never thought about the brand. Maybe let's prioritize that first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, presently we're just trying to adapt to that and changing needs and conversations. But then longer term, we're also trying to um, figure out how to adopt maybe a more purposeful and well thought out strategy around these sort of client partnerships and relationships and how we're approaching work and in what sort of sequence and priority. So, some of that is just really scrutinizing our core solution offering and how we're delivering that
Mhm.
and figuring out if there's different ways that we can align with needs and objectives of our client partners in different ways, but still delivering a similar sort of solution mix, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think you mentioned, and I don't even know if it was when we were talking here or before, but just some of the times where you had an opportunity, like the challenging landscape over the last few years. Part of the benefit in a way is it gives you time to sort of take a breath, sit back and go, okay, what are we doing? And we've been just racing for years. How do we unpack this? How do we, and it's a time, and I think this can happen to a lot of businesses. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses that won't survive lost a lot already, but there's a lot that we won't survive 24, 25, just from the buildup of problems and debt. But
Mhm.
for a lot of other businesses, it's an opportunity to kind of take a breath and retool and go at something in a much more efficient manner. Um, and that's it, like that. You mentioned that was one of the things that gave you this sort of ability to do that, to actually refine and improve your business, right?
Well, yeah, that's it. Change is the name of the game, and one of our driving manifestos is evolution or extinction, and you really do need to keep jumping to that next curve. I mean, even just look at what is presently happening in the world of AI and how that's
Mhm.
interfacing with what we do and presumably what you do as well. It's
Mhm.
there's a lot of implications there that you need to catch up, figure it out, or get left in the dust.
Yeah, it's something we're looking at all the time, and now we're treading carefully because diving in sort of willy nilly, it's like, well, we're not going to help our customers. We
Right.
could confuse our customers that way. We also aren't going to be the company that was like, darn it, this internet's a joke and it's a fad. Like,
Yeah.
no, we're embracing it. We're looking at, okay, how do we use that technology to better serve our customers? Um, and we're being careful about it. But like you said, it's evolution is absolutely the key. If we sit and refuse to change, we won't be around. And that's the same with most businesses.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
I wanted to sort of fast forward today a little bit as well, and I know we've talked a fair bit about some of the processes and things you do at Maverick, but I actually want to dig in a little bit, like where you are today, where you're kind of headed, and you mentioned a lot of the types of businesses you like to work with, but I just want to kind of dig into that a little bit more because you've got really focused in now on these great customers, and like tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of where we're going, we're looking at we're in a healthy place right now, and we're really just looking at a controlled, continued growth, entering into different client partnerships that are long term in nature, and where there's a good exchange of reciprocal value. Again, it kind of goes back to we really just want to team up with great people and do great work. At the end of the day, that's kind of it. Currently, in terms of like our client mix and where we're focusing, what we're doing, we're doubling down a bit in energy, which is kind of broad. Also, consumer products again, which I mentioned. So, consumer packaged goods is another area of keen focus for us.
And you mentioned like, and I understand it completely. Like you're finding those customers that I sort of wanted to divert a little bit here. Finding those customers where there you want to work with great people, and we always found that great people led to great people, and sometimes it was a little bit of the like we used to say, not, I don't want to say anything about people, but it's like a bad client always led to a bad client, and a great client leads to a great client. How do you look at it as not just like sort of nurturing those relationships and nurturing those referrals and repeat customers, and how much is that having an effect on your business?
It's a more challenging one to manage just because it's a bit removed from your control. So that's how it can be tricky. But I think ultimately, so much of what we do is relationship based, and I don't think you can really get too far away from that.
Mhm.
So in terms of handling that, it's just stay really focused on making sure you're delivering and over communicating and adding value. Because the minute that for us, the minute we stop adding value, we're toast.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no there never's been a lot of wiggle room, but there's no wiggle room now. There's
No, sure.
zero sort of wiggle room, and it's so true that like the world has changed so much, but it's still relationships. Like businesses, you're selling to a person, not to a business. B2B, it's the person in the B that you're selling to, right? And
Exactly.
yeah. Um, how should people find you if they want to get in touch with you and learn kind of more about what you guys do, or connect with you?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Blaine. I mean, first and foremost, I think our website is a great place to just learn more, a little bit about who we are, how we think, what we do, the type of work we do. So maverickagency.ca is where you can check that out. There's contact information there. Apart from that, I don't know if there's a way to attach that to what we're doing here. You know,
Yeah, we'll drop your the website address and that in the show notes. And but maverick agency.ca, they can track you down.
yeah,
And I'm assuming you're not just doing work sort of regionally. I'm assuming you've done work kind of across North America, because I know we'll have especially a lot of Americans listening to us today.
yeah, most definitely, and that's another keen area of focus for us. We do business all over North America. At one point, it was a bit expanded from there, which is challenging. But our current scope of regional focus is the United States, and then obviously Canada.
Yeah, yeah, that's terrific. Well, thanks so much, Matt. This was a really terrific conversation, and we could probably talk for a few hours, but it's
On Thursday.
time to sort of let you get back to your day. But thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, that was a ton of fun. Thanks, Blaine.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and catch our other episodes. And if you're looking for a way to peer into the future of your cash flow, manage your cash flow, model scenarios, figure out where you're going, please come visit us at dryrun.com. We'd love to chat with you.